Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con, Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask, and this week's guest is Bella O'Neill, who is the daughter of Tim O'Neill. You might remember seeing him maybe 3 months ago on Catholic Re.Con. And I can't wait for her to get into her testimony, but I also wanted to mention the organization she works for. It's called Justice for All. I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but I just wanted to tell you, Justice for All trains thousands to make abortion unthinkable for millions, one person at a time. It promotes respect for people with differing views and condemns all abortion-related violence. So I wanted Bella to be able to share her personal testimony, but also get into what she does for Justice for All. Bella, thank you so much for being on the show, and I appreciate your time, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me and this opportunity to share my story and my ministry opportunities. Justice for All is a pro-life Christian nonprofit organization based in Wichita, Kansas. I began my internship with JFA in August of last year, but in January, I was offered a full-time staff position. So since then, I've been working on becoming fully fundraised in order to continue my work with Justice for All. I believe so strongly in Justice for All's mission and impact in the pro-life movement. So, and for many reasons, but one huge one is that it activates, like you said, individuals who activate communities to become effective and gracious pro-life advocates. And I'm really excited to share my story and JFA's unique and necessary approach to the abortion issue and my pro-life journey. Being a missionary with JFA, my yearly salary is completely fundraised by passionately pro-life and faithful people like all of you, which is a big reason why I'm here today sharing my story. While you listen, I want to invite you all to prayerfully consider joining my pro-life efforts by joining my support team to help me become fully funded by June. I'll share more about this later on. Working with Justice for All these past 7 months has been such an impactful and powerful experience. Hindsight is a beautiful thing, I'm realizing, because it becomes so clear that God had just everything in control and our worrying is such a waste. That's probably been my biggest lesson working with Justice for All and coming to Justice for All. I've always been very pro-life for as long as I can remember. My grandma would gather me and my little cousins together to attend pro-life prayer rallies. We attended the Walk for Life in San Diego, which is where I grew up. And we just went to countless other pro-life events. I was quite the experienced activist at 6 years old. Growing up in such a loud and proud culture of life, it was never a question in my mind that abortion was wrong. I had a very basic idea of what abortion was. I was told it ended a life in the womb, but that was enough for me to understand because I was surrounded by such strong and beautiful women who, being Catholic mothers, were basically always pregnant. So it was such an amazing thing to witness all the time. Being the oldest of 5 and growing up really close with my aunts and uncles and numerous cousins, my childhood was full of gender reveal parties, sweet ultrasound pictures, feeling little babies kick, seeing my siblings in my mother's belly have hiccups, and just really seeing a mother go through pregnancy and seeing her body change, knowing that there's someone in there. That had an impact on me. The unborn to me were as familiar as the newborns I held in my arms just months later. So abortion was wrong. That was clear to me, but that was because I knew who it killed. So from a very young age, I was pro-life. And that was that. To me, growing up the way I did, that was just obvious. And being a kid and hearing what abortion is, I couldn't fathom anybody would support that. I couldn't even understand why someone would be pro-choice, let alone anyone could be pro-choice that was like me. So in my 6-year-old head, I thought, well, then a pro-choice people must basically be evil and have devil horns to support something that atrocious. And that was a logical conclusion in my little mind. The pro-choice movement was so separate from me, and I had never been confronted with pro-choice people, let alone their disagreements or their arguments. I didn't understand it. It was just vague and an evil concept. That is until one particular prayer rally with my grandma. And I speak a little bit about this in my support letter. But this day had a very lasting effect on me. I was holding a big sign that was basically the size of my body with big, bold letters that said in English and in Spanish, "Pray to end abortion." My cousins and my grandma were all around me holding very similar signs and rosaries. And we were on a sidewalk in downtown San Diego. So it was pretty hectic. But we were with a bunch of other Catholics and we were all peacefully protesting. And my prayer warrior of a grandma was leading a rosary with us. I mean, as best as you can with a group of squeamish kids. But it was just a casual thing that we did. Every once in a while, there would be someone honking as they passed. And I just thought, wow, awesome. They must be just as excited as we are. Until one particular car drove up the street, slowed down, and honked crazily, and then flipped us off. And as a 6-year-old, that was just scandalizing. I remember whipping my head around my cousins to see if they saw what I saw, and it was shocking. I kept on thinking, doesn't he know? Like, we're the good guys. Then before all us kids could go crazy, my grandma just whipped her head around and with all her grit and grace said, listen, Jesus loves that man as much as he loves you, the unborn baby, and every woman thinking of getting an abortion. So pray for them as much as you pray for these babies. And I look back on this day and I think the reason why it was so impactful for me is because for the first time in my life, which at that point was 6 long years, the pro-choice movement had a face, and it was just like mine. That man that flipped us off and drove away angrily, he had parents that loved him. He probably accomplished great things. He probably loved other people, and he lived in this world just like me. So what makes us different? Because I didn't see horns. I just saw anger. And where was that coming from? How could someone be angry at us, the good guys? And as I grew up, I met a bunch of new people. I went to different schools, clubs, and did different activities. So not only did the pro-choice movement have a face, it became full of people I loved, friends I hung out with, teachers I looked up to, family members. I realized people are not pro-choice because they are evil. In fact, I realized I had a lot of common ground with pro-choice advocates. We both shared a deep sorrow for victims of assault. We both believed that kids in foster care deserved better. Both our hearts break when we hear of women in such debilitating crises and desperation. We both are coming, most of the time, from compassion. And hearing pro-choice concerns and realizing that these people I loved genuinely loved other people. I had to ask myself, well, then why am I pro-life? Because my 6-year-old mentality of good guys and bad guys just really wasn't holding up anymore. I asked this question at a time in my life, maybe around like 13 or 14, when I was asking myself why I believed a lot of things. I mean, why am I Catholic? Is there a God? Are these beliefs I hold true, or are they just, what my parents believe? So when I asked myself, why am I pro-life? I had to do my own research and I had to figure out the truth. And this set me on a never-ending course of activism and just a thirst of knowledge. I listened to so many Trent Horn debates and videos, Catholic Answer segments, I read articles, listened to podcasts, and at some point, it became just so clear to me. There was no way I could ever be pro-abortion, and there was no way I could be convinced that it should be a choice for someone. Abortion undoubtedly takes the life of hundreds of thousands of innocent human beings, and this was a truth I couldn't overlook. And it was something that I couldn't be convinced of otherwise. Abortion takes advantage of women, those in poverty, and those in need of real help, offering no real solutions. I came to strongly believe that abortion is one of the most detrimental problems this country is facing. So my newfound passion for the pro-life movement came with a cost. I had this deep understanding of the weight of abortion. Thousands of lives were being taken. What could I do? Why wasn't there outrage? Because the unborn have become so hidden to us, and it's become so easy to see them as other, and therefore less valuable and less human than you and I. So my search for truth reignited my pro-life passion, and I needed to do something. but there wasn't many things I could do as a 14, 15, 16-year-old that just got a license. So I just became involved with my pro-life club on campus. I attended talks and presentations, and all the while was very vocal about my anti-abortion beliefs. Now, I've always been a very opinionated and bold person. You can ask my dad. I gave him a lot of grief, sometimes to my detriment. And I would like to think that these traits have only refined themselves, but during most of my high school career, I say like I didn't just graduate last year, but most of my high school career was full of many learning experiences and how to talk to people about controversial topics, abortion being one. And I had a lot of unhelpful conversations about abortion that either would end with a lot of tension and a meek, okay, we'll just agree to disagree between my friends, or it'd end in a fiery online altercation where we would never speak again. So I learned a lot through trial and error at this time, and a lot of humiliation, because I wasn't Trent Horn, but I found myself feeling a lot less able to have conversations about abortion because of how tense the debate got. Now, this didn't keep me from being involved in my pro-life community. I think joining a pro-life club on campus was really instrumental in my understanding of abortion, and having a community that supports you and your values is really important, especially when you're growing up in a place like Southern California and your anti-abortion view places you in a minority. But then COVID hit and my family made a massive move to Boise, Idaho, out of the blue, which is where I finished up my senior year of high school. So I was as involved in the pro-life community as I was involved with anything else during COVID, which was very, very little. Then came the big question, what am I doing after high school? And I had no real idea. All of a sudden, everyone looked at me, a 17-year-old, and asked me how I wanted to spend the rest of my life and whether I wanted to go into severe debt doing it. And finally, last minute, I committed to and was accepted at Thomas Aquinas College in Santa Paula, California. And this was my dream college, a place that offered a stellar faith formation, a unique classical education based off the great books, and a community full of young and vibrant Catholics. And I had some really great friends going there, so I was beyond excited. That is until my financial aid was denied, and it really looked like there was no real possibility I could go. And I was devastated, and I had a long, drawn-out, heated discussion with my parents over the next few weeks about whether it was really worth it to go into debt to attend a liberal arts college. And eventually it was evident that God just didn't want me to be there. And I had to come to terms with that, kicking and screaming. So I was back to square one, and I felt really stressed out. No career or school really stood out to me. I just had very passionate beliefs and interests and no real direction, which seems to be, me and every other 17-year-old. So I remember I went to adoration. I was kneeling down, and I just kind of threw my hands up and said, fine, God, I am so done planning out my life because you always seem to have a completely different idea. So take the wheel, take the wheel. And I surrendered myself to him out of spite. It's like, fine, God, you figure everything out if you know everything. And I begrudgingly said, thy will be done. And I began a novena in hopes that I could actually surrender my future to him in peace. And that he opens the doors that needed to be opened and gives me some kind of direction for my life, because I just felt so consumed with anxiety about it all. And then he started working fast. So a little bit of background, growing up in San Diego near Catholic Answers, my family became really good friends with Trent and Laura Horn. I've probably known them for 8 years. That's my claim to fame, by the way, in the Catholic world. I babysat Trent Horn's kids. So we're good friends with the Horns. And one day, Laura Horn reached out to my mom and said something like, hey, Trent went to a pro-life conference and met up with some of his old coworkers there. He used to work at a pro-life organization called Justice for All back in around 2010. I think Bella would be really interested in going on a mission trip with them or getting involved in some way. Just let us know if she'd be interested, because we'd love to sponsor her.
Wow.
So my mom tells me this when I'm still a little bit sore about not being able to go to Thomas Aquinas. And I don't know, I say something like, okay, Mom, we all know the kind of people that go on mission trips, and I'm just not that person. But she at least convinced me to check out the website. So within 5 minutes of me looking through Justice for All's website, like not really looking at it, I was like, okay, Mom, I'll open up the website. And I was just captivated. Justice for All offered so much. It has this kind of personality as an organization that I had not really associated with a pro-life mission trip. It just seemed like such a cool opportunity, and with just this really unique mission. Justice for All equips people, people like me to be gracious and persuasive ambassadors for Christ. They offer a training that's really interactive and has this role play in a workshop environment. And this training just then continues with when participants engage students and faculty at these kind of college campus outreach events that we do. So pro-life volunteers become active advocates, creating dialogue with pro-choice advocates and speaking the truth in love without compromise. JFA aims to train thousands to make abortion unthinkable for millions, just one person at a time. And reading into this, I found so much I didn't even know I wanted. Their goal to spread the truth effectively and in love without compromise was something I had been longing for in my pro-life journey, something I had really been lacking.
Let me ask you this. When they say spreading it without compromise, what do you mean by that without compromise? If you can just expound upon that a little bit.
Usually when people say something like, you share the truth with love or be gentle, it always kind of sounds like they're sacrificing something in the midst of that. Or when, you really emphasize listening and finding common ground with people who disagree with you. A lot of people can get the wrong idea that, oh, you're giving them, higher ground. You're just telling them that they're right or patting them on the back. Well, no, you don't have to sacrifice the truth and also find common ground and also love people. You don't have to give the truth and slap it over their heads and make it hurt. That's not what the truth is. So when we say share the truth in love without compromise, we're saying that you don't need to sacrifice the truth in the midst of being loving.
I love that message because the culture tends to push you the other way, that you must dilute the message considerably, so much actually that it becomes their message. And so also, before you go on, I wanted to ask, which novena did you pray?
I can't remember.
Is that right? So this was last summer, though. This was last summer? Wow. Okay.
I think I might have said, actually, I can't remember.
Maybe Surrender novena. Everyone's been talking about that, but
it's a good one. I can't remember. I probably should have wrote it down. So, looked into JFA and I was just hit with just an excitement about their mission. And before, when I had thought, no career standing out to me, and do I really have to be an English teacher for the rest of my life? Is that what's going to happen? Because I don't even know. Do I really want to do that? Looking into JFA just really ignited this passion I had, and I realized that I could work for something that's meaningful, or I could put this passion to good use. So the weight of abortion that hit me when I came to understand it hit me again, but this time I was just motivated because I found a way I could be a part of this movement and really make an impact. Because I thought, if we're going to fight for an end to abortion in America, we should be proactive in changing the hearts and minds that have been programmed since the 70s and maybe way before the 70s to be completely indifferent and ignorant toward this injustice. Because real change comes from real conversation. And that's what Justice for All is all about. What I found so intriguing and valuable at Justice for All was its emphasis on truly meeting the person where they are, listening to understand, asking questions with an open heart, and finding common ground whenever possible. We teach that these three skills are essential when it comes to dialoguing about abortion. People won't listen when you treat them like they're a pawn in your political game of winners and losers. Hearts and minds are changed in true conversation when they're being listened to. So Justice for All really hones in on these two needs within the pro-life movement. going out on the front lines to speak with pro-choice advocates and share the truth with them in love without diluting it, and training pro-life campus clubs and churches to do the same thing in their local communities. And that's another thing that really stood out to me about Justice for All, is that it was just so practical. It just made so much sense. You're giving tools to just your everyday people, and these everyday people are where it all changes. We are the game changer, especially young people.
Let me ask you this. So when you're training others and even you getting into one-on-one conversations, does Catholicism come up, or do you try to start with a position that affirms the dignity of life, or is that impossible to do without bringing in Catholicism? I'm curious how you approach that.
Yeah, so I usually try to take a stance without religion or faith initially, but if the other person brings it up or talks about, and this happens when I'm having conversations on campus with pro-choice people, they'll usually tell me, oh, well, what's the verse in the Bible that you're going to bring up? I don't want to hear about your, separation of church and state. It's like, you brought up the Bible first. I didn't. But sometimes they really do bring up, what's the purpose of us at all? Why is life meaningful at all? You can't tell me that we have the obligation or the right to life with just scientific facts. So I've had a lot of great opportunities, not necessarily when we're training people. I think our seminars are pretty structured and interactive, and most of the people, not all of them, there's a lot of people that are not from religious backgrounds, but I think a lot of the people we do train do come from religious backgrounds. But on campus, I'll have conversations that lead to more deeper beliefs and worldviews. And I will always be excited to share my Catholic faith and my Catholic views. And I think that the Catholic teaching on abortion and birth control and similar topics is so straightforward and clear and beautifully taught and backed up with a lot of great evidence.
It's coherent.
Yeah, it's really easy. It's really easy for me to defend.
Yep. Awesome.
So yeah, Justice for All gives great opportunities to share the gospel as well whenever we're on outreach or having these kind of conversations, which has been a really great opportunity. But yeah, those are kind of our two focuses, which I think is, initially hearing it kind of seems like I hadn't really heard of a pro-life organization that just does outreach on college campuses. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is genius, because there's this dire need to reach out to college students. Most Planned Parenthoods are within a 5-mile radius of college campuses. Most women get abortions in their mid-20s, which means college women and women newly entering the workforce are most vulnerable to abort. And there's this huge one-sidedness within the university system. So I'll have a lot of people on campus that'll come up to me, and I hear a variety of arguments. And sometimes people will just give me these phrases. And I ask more questions, I try to understand the view, and they don't even understand what abortion is. I had a conversation with a woman at Tarleton State University last semester. She kind of approached our exhibit, looked around, didn't really seem like she would stop, but she was interested. And so I asked her if she was willing to sign our poll, should abortion remain legal? She just kind of stopped and looked at me and was like, I don't really know a lot about abortion. I've always, I've had a lot of pro-choice family and friends, and I don't want women to be in horrible circumstances, but, I can also understand this other point of view. But then again, I just kind of don't understand either. I was like, well, I'd love to have a conversation with you if you have time. She's like, yeah, actually, do you think that you could give me some information about what abortion is? I was like, hey, that's what I'm here for. So we pulled aside and we sat down and we had just an incredible conversation. We have a little brochure that's this really great dialogue tool. It starts with some phrases and pictures that could help with a lot of common ground, maybe some desperate situations women find themselves in. And then you flip to the next page and it has some images of fetal development and a question, where do you draw the line? When do we become human? Biological life versus philosophical value. These are big questions. What do you think? And then the next page, there's some graphic images of abortions from, I think it's just the first trimester where most abortions happen. And so I just said, hey, are you familiar with fetal development? Would that interest you? She's like, yeah, I have no idea. Are they just like a clump of cells? And I said, well, I mean, technically, I mean, we all are, but let's look at these pictures. So we walked through these pictures and she was just captivated. She was captivated, and she's like, they have fingers and toes at like 6 or 7 weeks post-fertilization. I was like, yeah, it's pretty incredible. She's like, they have a heartbeat at 3 weeks post-fertilization. And I said, yeah, they have a very underdeveloped heart at that time. Isn't that, it's beating really fast too. And they're growing at such a fast rate. And so we just went over the biology and we talked about it some more. And then she just seemed really captivated. She's like, that's just so cool. Like, how come we've never been taught that? And I said, there's probably a lot of reasons why we haven't been taught that. And it's sad. It's sad that I talk to so many people who are saying, I'm going for a biology major or I'm becoming a nurse. And then I asked them, when does life begin? And when does life begin? And by biological life. And they're just like, well, like a real baby? I don't really know. And it's in this really huge disconnect between cultures too. Yeah. And so then I asked this girl, have you ever seen an abortion image? And I usually don't, at this time, I didn't really show graphic images that much. It just wasn't something that came up in a conversation, but recently I realized how powerful they are and how necessary they are, especially in a generation where people don't see that. They see a lot of violence, but they don't see abortion pictures. And so we flipped the page and instantly, wide-eyed, she had never seen something like that before. And I hear a lot of really disgusting things when I show people graphic images, which is one of the reasons why I really have to read the person and the conversation before I show them, because it can be really disheartening, the things that you hear. I've heard people say, okay, so it looks disgusting, so does my period. I was like, okay, let's talk about that. I think, they're very different. Or I've heard people say, okay, you can't manipulate me with this. I was like, I'm sorry that you feel manipulated. I wasn't trying to manipulate you. So it's a really difficult thing to navigate, especially when I'm on the other side, really feeling the hurt that abortion brings, really understanding like this is a person and I'm looking at their body, their dead body. It's huge. And these people look over it because they don't understand. But she was absolutely taken back. And she was just staring at it. And I just gave her a moment. And I took the brochure and I was like, what do you think about that? She's like, that's horrific. That's horrific. And that's a human. Like, she was completely like taken back by that. And then we had this, through kind of the entryway into that biology, she really opened up and she had said, my mom was a single mother, which is why in some ways I feel for these women. Because yeah, my mom went through a lot. She had my older sister when she had to have 2 jobs and was getting through college, and the dad was a jerk and out of the picture. And then, it was just, she was struggling. She could barely take care of herself, and she had a baby, and that's huge. I said, your mom sounds like an incredible woman to have taken on all that. She said, yeah, but my mom always nicknamed me Sunshine, because in this time that she went through this horrible time in her life, she got pregnant with me. And she said that I was the light of that dark time in her life. And you don't hear that. You don't hear that in general when people talk about kids. You don't hear that, especially when a single mom who's going through the hardest time in her life gets pregnant with another kid and then calls her the light of her life. And so then she kept talking. It was like she was working through the issue in her head, and I was just there to listen. I was just there to be an instrument of God's work and just listen. And so she said, so in some ways, I understand these women that are in these horrible circumstances. But then again, I just want to tell them that, yes, this is such a hard time in your life, but that baby could be your sunshine too. And it was like a goosebump moment. And then that gave way to this bigger topic of, this hardships that she had gone through in her life, and how her mom was always such a stronghold for her, despite all this suffering that she's gone through. And then we opened up and we talked about her faith life and whether she believed in God. And she had said she had been really hurt by some people in her church growing up, and she kind of associated church with hate and the Bible with this fire and brimstone. And she believed God was there, that when she listened to some Christian songs, she felt this warm feeling, and she likes the idea of a God that knows and loves her, but she doesn't know how to know him, because prayer seems like a chore, and it seems like an obligation that she gets nothing in return. And I'm not a Catholic apologist, but all I could do is tell her my story and how I used to feel so similarly. But the creator of the sun created her to shine for him, and the relationship that she has with God is not fire and brimstone, because just as much as he is a God of justice and in virtue, he's the God of just endless love and mercy. And he is just there for her and wants her. And she started tearing up, and then we just had this really great conversation about my story and her story. And it wasn't me lecturing her. It wasn't me telling her what's right and what's wrong and what she needs to do. It was me just saying, there's a God that wants you. And that same God that's a father of you is a father of these children that we're out here protecting. So it was just this really cool experience to talk with her and share a piece of my faith, and then also open up a window into the abortion issue and give her a face for it. Because you can hear about something that's so atrocious and evil, or you can hear about all these different sides of an issue, but until it becomes personal, it's not going to resonate with you. As much as I hear about horrible things that happen in other countries, and I could say, oh, that's wrong, it will not be as real to me as it is for those people that are watching it happen.
Yeah.
And that's our job out there on campus, to show people who, being in a university or in a home that never really brought it up, have had the unborn completely hidden to them, to show them what abortion is and what it does. And so this girl, I think she had to get to class or something, but we stood up and I said, thank you so much for sharing with me and having this conversation with me. And she's like, can I give you a hug? I was like, yeah, sure. So we hugged it out, and she said, you showed me things I didn't even know I was looking for. Thank you so much. Can I keep this brochure? I was like, yes, of course. Thank you. And these kind of conversations are the conversations that are just so encouraging, because I don't have conversations that I get to see someone's mind changing all the time. I mean, if sometimes I'm watering a seed, sometimes I see the seed sprout, sometimes I see it bloom right in front of me. Sometimes I'm like toiling that ground and I'm thinking, is there ever going to be a plant here? It's just an entire spectrum. But those times that I get to see God's work in other people, it just is such a motivation for the work that, and a testimony for the kind of impact that Justice for All does.
And you have no idea how many people you're going to talk to on any given day. You could just be one of those days where it's slow. I don't know. I just think of being at trade shows and it's just a dead day. And then there's one person that comes over and says, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy this and this and this. There's a parallel there clearly about, you don't know what is going to happen that day, but what you just described is so impactful that you could have someone, you could be the fifth, I'm always thinking in terms of business, but in terms of marketing, the fifth impression that really just transformed them. But it took 4 people before you to make one statement about abortion, and it got them to that point, and then God intervenes and does what he does.
It's a really beautiful, it can be exhausting, but it's a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And I think my biggest lesson coming into JFA, I was just so excited. I was so excited. I still am excited, but I was really excited, like, I can change hearts and minds and be Ben Shapiro basically. And going through the training was really insightful and really gives you this really good mindset to come onto campus. But even then I was having conversations and I was thinking, like, this is awesome. Like, I feel like I have all these answers and I can't wait to see other people see that truth too. Because when you have something that's so good, you want to give it to other people. And that's how I felt. But then doing this for 7 months, I realized it's not as easy and straightforward and as I want it to be all the time, which seems to be a theme with me and God. And, I'll have days where it'll be just like you said, like no one is coming. Or I'll have days when people are screaming in my face, saying disgusting, horrendous things to me. And you walk away thinking, why am I doing this? I can't see these flowers blooming. I can't see people taking in this goodness. All I get is hate and spite. And if this is the America I'm dealing with, then how's abortion ever going to be unthinkable or illegal? And it can become disheartening, but a huge lesson I've learned is something like you described. Like if I'm just going to talk to one person today, I was meant to talk to that person, no matter how horrible or unfruitful that conversation went. God's using it. And I don't have to see God's work. I don't have to see his plan for it to be real. I'm not that important. I'm just his. And all I can do is be his and be his spokesperson as imperfectly as I can. And hopefully he does something in spite of my imperfections. And Justice for All enables imperfect people to do just that.
That was great. Very, very well said. So when I picture someone, and I haven't been in the situations that you just described, not even close, but when you talk about someone yelling at you, we see that on YouTube all the time, these confrontations, and it's supposed to get a bunch of clicks. And it would be tempting in those moments to see those people that are screaming that they're a lost cause. And that's not the case. We have no clue what's going to come of that. Maybe the people that vent to someone that's just an innocent bystander, maybe they start thinking about that in the days that follow, the weeks that follow, and they have remorse. Maybe the first time they've had remorse in a long time. We have no clue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to remind people of that just because someone's losing it, they have something going on in their heart, like you said at the beginning about anger. And there's got to be a way to pray for those people that just don't know what to do with those emotions, basically. Yeah. Why don't you talk unless you had another portion to share, I wanted you to talk about what did you call it? The support page? Or
yes, my support team.
Yeah. Go ahead and make a plea. I mean, this is an incredible cause.
So working with Justice for All, like I had mentioned earlier, I am responsible to fundraise my entire salary for as long as I am committed to work with Justice for All. And I want to invite everyone who's watching to consider supporting me in this endeavor, in financially or in prayer. Either is really necessary. My goal is to raise $3,600 a month. This will cover my salary and related expenses. So if 36 generous people commit to 100 a month, I will be fully funded. By supporting my work, I'm able to continue having conversations with pro-choice students, just like the woman I mentioned earlier. So I would love if everyone prayerfully considered helping me in this mission, if you believe God might be calling you to participate in supporting me.
Excellent. Bella, you sent all the links to me, right?
Yes, I did.
I will make sure that everyone that's watching has those links in the description. Is there anything else you want to add? I tend to ask people, because your stories, it's just begun, really. I talk to people that are in their 50s, 60s. I'm sure you've seen every age, and you're just getting started here. What would you say to the high school girls? And I'm sure you run into high school girls too. I mean, you spend a lot of time on college campuses, but what would you say to these high school girls as they start to, you talk about people that are entering a world that is so confused, and the arguments are so illogical, but you just kind of accept them because they're handed to you. How would you address just this generation it's your generation, really, just coming out of high school? It's not like you're that far removed, but anyway.
Well, I guess, are you asking what I would say to the high school students that are trying to break away from kind of the norm of our
Yes,
generation?
thank you for asking a clarifying question. Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Yes.
Okay, I would say find a community that is on the same page as you. Find a group of girls or people in a similar age group, and just unite with them in your shared values, because that's going to be so impactful. I know that when I switched schools and I became really close with my family, and I had a group of friends that was on the same page as me and uplifted me in my Catholic faith, joining the pro-life club gave me this sense of unity and community that is always, you can just always stand firmly on, because you can't do it alone. And going out with other people on the mission to spread truth and love and become the person Christ made you to be, you can't do that alone. God gave us other people because we need them.
Yep.
So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Find a group of girls or a group of friends or a youth group that you guys can become better together.
Yeah.
And band together, because then the all of the grossness of our culture that gets to us through social media or celebrities or Hollywood or all the politics that just get in our brains and pull us down will become so much easier to fight off with a community of people that are trying to make you better. So be friends with people that want the best for you. And what the best for you is to be closer to Christ, which is another thing I keep telling my brothers. Just remain so close to the sacraments, adoration and confession and the Eucharist. Are you coming like eyelash to eyelash with love himself? And you can't become more like him without receiving him. So that's been the biggest lesson of my entire life, is becoming so close to him. So a closeness with Christ, a love of him, and a love of your neighbor, the two best things you can do.
Well said, Bella. It's a pleasure having you on. I'm very glad that this worked out. Everyone, you heard Bella's message. If you can, please pray for an end to abortion. Pray if God is calling you to help Bella's mission and the mission of justice for all. There's a lot of work to be done. Please share this video, comment. If you have personal stories you want to share, please reach out. Until next time, take care and God bless.